Hi, I'm Madison and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my best books of 2021. Now, I do want to preface this by saying that I do have a separate video talking about my top 10 spicy romances of 2021, because if I tried to fit all those into this, it would have just been mostly romances. So I wanted to do something that had a little bit of everything in it. So if you are curious about my best spicy romances, please check out this video up here. Strangely enough, I read a lot of fantasy books in the beginning of 2021, but then they kind of padded off towards the end of the year, and you know, none of them truly stuck with me as full-on 5-star reads. I mean, sure, I did love Of Course of Silver Flames by Sarah J Maas, but it's definitely not my favorite Sarah J Maas book, so it's not making this list. And while I did love Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson, it hasn't really stuck with me as much as I did when I first read it. So I do have two YA fantasies that I want to give honorable mentions to, because while they aren't all-time favorites, I did really enjoy these, and these were the two standout fantasy books for me in 2021, and that is Jade Fire Gold by June C.L. Tan and Legendborn by Tracy Deon. This is great if you're a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender. It has a lot of elemental vibes to it. The romance in this is like a romance between Zuko and, if Avatar Aang ended up being a female, the two of them, great romance. And then this here is a urban fantasy Camelot Arthurian retelling fantasy book, which I really did adore. Can't wait to read the sequel to this next year. This was super amazing. It is quite dense depending on who you are as a reader. It can be hit or miss. I absolutely adored it. I had such a blast reading this, mostly because it has a morally grey magician side love interest, and I just love morally grey magicians, so yes. Now let's move on to my list. I'm going to start with a absolute banger of a book, and that is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. This is a horror novel. I think that's what you would classify it as. I listened to this on audiobook, which was a great decision. Also not a great decision, because there is one character in it who is Aussie, and the Aussie accent that the narrator did wasn't the best Aussie accent I've heard, but you know what, it was tolerable. But this was amazing, blew me away. I've heard so many amazing things about this book and finally picked it up. It is about killer mermaids in the Marianas Trench, and it is about this crew of scientists who go on an expedition there to go and find them. And it was a whirlwind. The first half of this book is kind of slow going because it has to do with you finding out that there was an expedition that happened many, many years ago where everyone was killed on it, and there was footage of mermaids, but no one believes it was real. And kind of this girl whose sister was killed on that expedition, how she has been determined to find out what actually happened all these years. And then she ends up being one of the people sent back to the Marianas Trench on this new expedition to find out about the mermaids. And it is amazing. It is also queer. I hear no one talking about the fact that this is queer. There's a female-female romance smack in the middle of this, which was super adorable. Do you want to mention that? No one ever says it. But this was so cool, so atmospheric, and it's sort of I'm sciencey, and so the sciencey aspects of this are really fun and cool, and there's a claustrophobic element to it. It was just so atmospheric. One of the best books I've ever read, and I would highly recommend it to everyone. Even if you don't like horror, it's not horror per se, it's just killer mermaids. Moving on, we do have the one YA book that made it onto this list. That is Jade's Gay Agenda by Jason June. This was a hoot and a half. It's a YA gay romance that kind of goes more towards older teens, because there is some descriptiveness when it comes to exploring your gay sexuality for the very first time. So in this book, you're following Jay. Now, he is a gay teen, and he lives in this very small town where he's the only gay teen in his town, and so he's never actually experienced any romance, and he's jealous of all of his friends, until one day his family up and moves to Seattle. And when he gets there, he is determined to fulfill his list of his gay agenda, all these milestones and this bucket list he wants to hit. And it's him exploring his sexuality for the first time, and kind of the mistakes that he makes along the way, and the ups and downs of his friendship. It is just so realistic, so funny. There are some of the things that he does, I sat there and I go, no, I made that mistake, don't do it. It was so good. It was so hilarious. A lot of the jokes made in this made me laugh my ass off. I've recommended this to so many of my friends. It is very campy at times too, and I loved it. And I even got this signed copy from Jason June that says, "To Madison, a true libido liberator. Thank you for all your support, Jason June. Now, if you don't know what a libido liberator is, read this book and you'll find out. Now, I have 3 historical romances on this list. I'm going to start off with one of the first ones I read this year that made such an impact on me, and that is Destiny's Embrace by Beverly Jenkins. This is an American historical romance set in the West, and this took me by surprise. I started reading it and I was so shocked as to how invested, how in love I became with it. I distinctly remember when I started reading this book, I was getting my nails done, I was getting a refill, and I was like, let's just start this up, see what it's like. And I was like obsessed with it, that my nail tech was like, can you pay attention, please? When it comes to the romance genre, if you have not read Beverly Jenkins, you are doing yourself a disservice. This follows Mariah Cooper and Logan Yates. The entire series follows the Yates brothers who live in a ranch in West America, and this is so funny because Mariah ends up getting hired as a maid to look after Logan's estate because he is constantly off doing like looking after the ranch and traveling and doing all this stuff, and he's kind of let his house go into disarray. And Mariah is someone who has been living in the East Coast, and her mother treats her like complete and utter crap, and she's always been under her mother's purview. Her mother always takes every single cent and all the money that she has ever made, and Mariah decides that she is done, she is fed up with it, so she ends up seeing this ad for a job in the West, and she's like, I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna find my own way. And their romance is so funny because she is so headstrong. She's so sick of being walked all over that when she gets to the West, she's like, that is it. I'm not gonna let anyone tell me what to do anymore. And Logan is like, who is this woman? What does she think? Like, who does she think she is? What is going on? He's like, can she not? And she's like, can you not? And at one point he gets so upset with like someone else and is fighting with him that she literally takes a bucket of water and just dumps it on them and is like, you guys need to cool down. It was amazing. It was amazing. Trust me, give Beverly Jenkins a chance. Now we're gonna move on to one of the most heartbreaking emotional romances I read this year. It didn't make me cry, but it like killed me inside. That is Come Back For Me by Corinne Michaels. This is a second chance romance, which is very surprising to me on this list because I 9 times out of 10 hate second chance romances. This is that 1 time out of 10 where it works, and it works so magically that it is actually, this is not the only second chance romance on this list. Anyway, regardless, this follows Connor and Ellie. Connor and Ellie met 10 years ago and had one night together and then never saw each other ever again, but they have always held on to that one night all these years later. Ellie is currently in a very, very, very emotionally and physically abusive marriage, and she has a daughter that she's trying to look after and try and keep safe from her husband. And Connor has been in the military for the last couple of years. Growing up, his dad was an alcoholic and abusive to him and his 4 brothers, and he always vowed never ever to go back to his small hometown. All 4 of the brothers vowed never to go back because they were just so broken down by what happened when they were kids that they wanted to escape that life. However, when this starts off, the 4 Garwood brothers find out that their father has passed away, and so they go back for the funeral, and they end up learning that in order to inherit their will, in order to get their inheritance, they must each spend 6 months on the farm that their father owned in order to then get their inheritance. And this book follows Connor as he spends the first 6 months at the Garwood farm, and him being reconnected with Ellie, who is actually on the estate next door, and kind of helping her out of this abusive marriage that she's in, and her helping herself out of this abusive marriage, and this little girl that he ends up falling in love with. And it is just so utterly beautiful, so breathtaking, because they both come from such traumatic backstories, but they have always held on to one another as this like sense of hope, as this light, and it is just so beautiful. The lines in this are gorgeous. Connor never pushes Ellie. He's like, you have been through a lot. He's like, your relationship was so damaging to you. You need the time to heal. I am here to let you heal. I am here just to be someone who will listen to you. I will do whatever you say. I just want you to be comfortable. And it was so beautiful, so gorgeous. I adored the crap out of it. Since I'm already on the trend of second chance romances, might as well mention again The Magic by Lisa Kleypas. This is book 0.5 in the Wallflower series. I do actually recommend reading it before the Wallflower series because I read it afterwards, and I think it would have been more fun to read it beforehand. Regardless, my favorite of the Wallflower series, and this is a second chance romance, and it killed me. I cried while reading this. Now, I don't know if I cried while reading it because I was just in a very fragile emotional state the weekend that I read this book, or if it was just really emotional as a book. But anyway, so this is a forbidden romance between Lady Aileen Marsden and John McKenna. Lady Aileen Marsden is, you know, a lady. She is high in society, and John McKenna is a stable boy at their estate. And they have been best friends since they were kids. They grew up together, they fell in love together, they were each other's first loves, until Aileen's dad finds out about their romance and threatens Aileen and says, if you don't get McKenna to leave, if you don't make him leave, I will ruin this boy and make sure he has no future. And so she ends up breaking his heart, and then we flash forward like 10 years where Aileen is still single, she's still living her life, she's never really gotten over what happened between her and McKenna comes back into her life as this very wealthy American businessman, and he has vowed to get revenge on Aileen after what happened all those years ago. And so it's very, oh my god, this is like so angsty. They have like the most angstiest romance in the entire world because she knows why he's mad at her. She understands his frustration and his anger, even though it's all from a huge misunderstanding. She knows that, and she thinks that she still deserves it. And he is so torn between wanting to hate her for what happened all those years ago, but still harboring this huge like flame for her and still being so in love with her. And I loved it. I loved it. One of the best historical romances of all time. Now, going from that, we have one of my favorite books of the year, probably my favorite book of the year, which is very questionable. That is Gamesy by Dana ISLAY. Now, this is a short novella, and it is a faceless gamer boy erotica novella. If you're wondering what that means, it's a romance between a journalist who goes to do an article on this faceless gamer guy. Now, a faceless gamer is a streamer who streams video games, but you hear his voice, you never know what he actually looks like. He'll wear like a mask or something if he does stream, or just as like a picture up. Think Corpse Husband, if you know who Corpse is. Now, this is got a lot of triggers in it. Do be aware going into that. It is also extremely spicy, extremely kinky, extremely sexy. It is like top tier, one of my favorite things I've read of all time, but it is not going to be for everyone. But I freaking loved it because I'm a gamer, and this fulfilled gamer fantasies because I would love to marry the guy who was in this book. Now, do I want everything that happened in this book to happen to me? No. No. Did I still love the guy? Yes. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Next we have It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. I feel like this is on a lot of people's favorite books of 2021, but I loved this romance so much. It was so much fun. I'm also a huge Schitt's Creek's fan, so this just fulfilled all those dreams. Plus, I love small town romances. This is set in a small coastal town as well. It's just total perfection everywhere. So this follows Piper and Brendan. Piper Bellinger is a Instagram influencer. She's very rich, she's an heiress, and she has been flaunting her wealth all the time. She's proud of who she is. No one really expects anything of her. Everyone thinks she's just a complete utter airhead. And one night, her current boyfriend breaks up with her and is so rude about it that she decides she's gonna act out and prove him wrong, and she throws this massive illegal pool top party. Now, she ends up getting called by the police, gets in trouble, and her stepdad is like, that's it. You can't keep acting out like this anymore. You need to be responsible. You need to get your stuff together. I am cutting you off and sending you to go stay in your mother's hometown, which is also her father's hometown. Her dad is deceased. Her biological dad, he passed away when she was a child, so she never really knew about him. And now she's being sent back to go live in the town that he lived in to kind of learn her roots and to kind of get a grip on reality. When she gets there, she ends up meeting this grumpy fisherman named Brendan. And Brendan wants nothing to do with Piper. He goes, this is some spoiled girl who has no life experience. She doesn't understand everything. She's walking around here in short dresses and high heels. This is a coastal fishing town. What the actual crap? However, he slowly begins to realize, oh no, I'm in love with this woman, and it is their romance. It is total grumpy sunshine. They are so hilarious together, such a pure romance. He will do anything for her. He wants the best in the world for her. I can't, like, I want to reread this. I'm sitting here talking about this. I read it like 6 months ago. Now I want to reread it because, oh my God, it is so good. It is also quite spicy. I'd say it's like a level 2 on like the steaminess level because there's some stuff that happens in this, but loved it to death. One of Tessa Bailey's best in my opinion, and I freaking loved it. Highly recommend, and I cannot wait to read book 2 in this, which follows her sister and his best friend. 5 stars. Now, for my next pick, technically it's 3 books, but it's really 1 book if you think about it technically. The author is Sophie Lark. Sophie Lark is one of my favorite authors I discovered in 2021, and these are my 3 favorite books from each of her series. So This is her Sinner's Duet. Obviously I loved it. This is a dark serial killer romance between a starving artist and an obsessed serial killer artist. That's got a lot of triggers in it. It's definitely dark, definitely messed up, be careful. Then we have Savage Lover. This is my favorite book in her Brutal Birthright series, which I read this year. This is between Nero and Camille. Nero is the bad boy of the mafia family that we are following, and Camille is a poor mechanic, and the two of them have this intense and crazy bond over cars. And there is a bit of like a heist that goes on in this book as well, as they kind of get both caught in some crazy things that are happening in their town in Chicago. And then my number one, which is ɪvān, which is the main one I want to talk about. This is book 1 in her Underworld series, which I also read this year, and my favorite one in it. I started the Kingmaker series, but I read most of that here in 2022, so I'm not going to be mentioning that in this video, but this is probably one of my favorite Sophie Lark books, apart from some of the ones I've read this year, because ɪvān and Salome are one of my favorite couples of all time. They are such a power couple. They are so complete and so meant for one another. They mean the absolute world to me. I love Sloane. Sloane is one of my favorite characters that I've ever read, one of my favorite heroines I've ever read. Freaking phenomenal. This follows the head of the Bratva in St. Petersburg, and that is ɪvān. And he, you know, is very up and coming. Some people are trying to challenge his power, but you know, he is the top dog. And then you have Sloane. And Sloane is an American hit woman, and at the beginning of this, she gets given a hit, gets paid to go kill ɪvān. And at first she's like, why would I do that? I'm not stupid. But the money's a lot, and so she goes, okay, fine, I'll go, I'll kill him. However, she gets right up to when she's about to murder him, and he wakes up and takes her as his captive. Their romance is so amazing. It's so badass. While it is captive, and while she does become falls for him and is infatuated with him, she never stops trying to escape, which I really appreciated too. It was just so much fun. If you do want to start with Sophie Lark, do start with her Brutal Birthright series, because chronologically it makes more sense to do that. But this is probably one of my favorite Sophie Lark books, will always be one of my favorite Sophie Lark books, because this is what introduced me to mafia romances, which is now one of my favorite subgenres of all times. It introduced me to Sophie in general as one of my new favorite authors. This is just one of my all-time favorite couples. It's so much fun. It's so action-packed. I like when my mafia romances have a lot of action in them as well, and I like when my heroines are really badass and headstrong, and Sloane is a badass, headstrong American hit woman, which I adored, and so phenomenal. Okay, 2 more books left. Next, I have The Secret by Julie Garwood. This is a Highlander historical romance, and it's what made me realize that I love Highlander historical romances. This follows Judith, who is half English, half Scottish, and you know, she's mostly grown up in England, so she's, you know, an English woman, but she has a best friend from her childhood named Frances Catherine, who is Scottish and lives in the Highlands. And as they've grown up throughout their childhoods together, they have always promised that when Frances Catherine got of age and got married and had a baby, that Judith would be there to help her with the birth, because Frances Catherine's mother and grandmother and great-great-grandmother all died during childbirth, and Frances Catherine doesn't want that to happen to her. So Judith over the last couple of years has been studying midwifery so that she can help Frances Catherine when the time comes, and the time has come. Frances Catherine is pregnant, she's gonna be giving birth soon, so she tells her clan, she tells her laird, and is like, I need you guys to bring my best friend from England here. And they go, no, she's an English woman. We hate the English, because this is set during a time when the English and the Scots don't get along. But she's like, please, and she's married to the brother of the current laird, and he goes, fine, I will go get this English woman for you, but if she refuses to come because, you know, she's an up and toddy, English woman, you can't get mad at me. So he goes to England to go and see Judith, thinking that she's going to be this uptight, prim Englishwoman who's going to see these big, bad, scary Scotsmen and be like, oh no, I don't want to go. But then he gets there, and she's there, she's got her horse, she's got her staff, she's like, let's go, ready to go see Frances Catherine, and he's like, who is this woman? What is this woman? Who does she think she is? Why does she speak her mind? And it is hilarious because he's the laird of his clan, Ian, and he is so used to everyone listening to him, everyone following his ways, and here is this feisty English woman, and he's like, what do I do with her? Who is she? And it is so hilarious because the first half of this has to do with them traveling there, and then it's her being part of the Scots, and the Scots kind of hating her but then starting to love her at the same time. It is so hilarious. It is so much fun. I love this to death. They have this very angsty romance because he is in love with her but refuses to be in love with her, and she's like, damn, he's hot, but why he's so grumpy. And it is so great. It is so amazing. It took me by surprise, especially an older historical romance. delicious. And then we have my very last favorite book of 2021, but definitely not the least, and that is Lessons in Corruption by Giana Darling. This book is magical to me because this book is one of those books where I can now proudly say there is no trope that you don't like. There is no like theme or anything. There's nothing that you can't like. It just depends on the author, because I have always said I hate age gap romances. I hate student-teacher romances. And you know what happened? I read Giana Darling and she goes, you thought, JK, you do love age gaps. You do love student-teacher romances. And look at that. Now it's a 5-star and one of your favorite books of all time. And I go, oh shit, she right. So this is a motorcycle club romance set in Canada. This follows the fallen men MC. You are following King Carl Garrow, who is the heir, the son of the current president of the motorcycle club. And then you follow Cressida Irons, who is in the process of getting divorced from her husband and is currently working as a poor teacher. Now, she ends up meeting King one night, doesn't really know who he is, just knows that he is, you know, a motorcycle dude. And they hit it off. They have a very whirlwind romance over a set couple of weeks until the school year starts, and it turns out that he is actually a student in her class. He is 18 at the time of this. She immediately breaks stuff with him and is like, we can't be together. And he's like, that's irrelevant. Like, you're meant to be, like, you are my one person. You are the person I've always been looking for. And it is their romance. It is actually so beautiful, so captivating, so addictive. King is so determined to put Cressida up on a pedestal. He is like, you are an amazing woman. You are currently stuck in this awful, awful, abusive marriage where everyone has always told you that you have no worth, but you do. You are a queen. You are my queen. And she, oh my God, she comes out of her shell during this. She learns who she is. And King is just amazing. It is so 5 out of 5-star material. Like, I was so blown away when I saw this book. I devoured it so quickly. It is like an obsession of mine. I would reread this like in a heartbeat because they are just so beautiful together and are just like an OTP. So, loved it. Anyway, that is it. Let me know if any of these top 10 books were in your top 10 of 2021. And thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy it, please hit that button down below. If you want to see more of me, let's go to my channel. And until next time, thanks a bunch everyone. Bye-bye.